जय जय श्री राधे सब वैष्णवों को जय श्री कृष्ण और continuing the reading of the 252 Vaishnava Varta. Today is day number 88 and Varta 66, the story of King Jyotsingh, and we reached to this part yesterday. We're continuing the reading now. At that very moment, the king began to suffer pangs of longing and fell at the priest's feet. He said, "Please let me see this beautiful form again." The priest said, "You will be able to see him again if you travel to Ardel. There you can see the direct manifestation of Sri Vittalnathji." The king became very restless and set out on the trip. He travelled day and night, and it took them only a few days to reach Ardel. He had the sight of Sri Gosaiji in the same form as he had seen him before. The priest spoke on behalf of the king. "Please initiate him with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandha." Sri Krishna did just that. The king stayed in Ardel for some time and learnt all the ways of Seva in the path of grace. When he took leave of Sri Gosaiji, he made some sizable donations. He received 1 Svarupas for Seva. Then he went to Srinatadwara for the holy site of Sri Govardhanaji. He made a tour of Vraja and stayed on an extra day before coming back to his home. He then began to live according to the priest's instructions. He gave Rasai Devi to one Brahmin and exclusively began to serve the Swarupa that Sri Gosaiji had granted him according to the ways that he had been taught. He also used to get together with the priest to do seva. In the evenings, the two of them would get together to discuss the Lord's pastimes. As he continued in this way, his Sri Thakurji began to communicate with him directly and let him have the experience of his direct conversation. He had so many experiences, all through the auspices of the priest. The king followed the priest's teachings and ways. Bhav Prakash. This story teaches that it is easy to find liberation through the company of Vaishnavas. The company of an experienced, surrendered Vaishnava makes everything so clear. They bring all happiness because the Lord depends on such loving devotees. Through the grace of such Vaishnavas, one can have the direct experience of the Lord's pastimes. What more can be said? Even a new body can be attained. Therefore, one should always seek the company of such Vaishnavas and serve them. Thus concludes Varta 66, the story of King Jyotsingh, who is the recipient of great grace from Sri Gosaiji and an accomplished Vaishnava. There is no end to his tale. Varta 67, the story of the family Brahmin priest or Purohit of King Jyotsingh, who lived in a village 50 miles from Pandharpur. Bhav Prakash. He is a devotee of Rajasi disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Saubhagya Sundari, who is part of the Sri Yamunaji's group of Sakhis. When Sri Yamunaji thus commands her, she perfects all the fortune of the devotees and is loved by all. She appears from Harini and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. The Brahmin Purohit was born in a village 50 miles from Pandharpur in the south. He was a family priest of King Jyotsingh. Once, when he was about 20 years old, he had a dream in which he had the holy sight of Sri Vittalnathji. Sri Vittalnathji granted him his holy sight together with all his divine opulence. When the priest awoke, he was riddled with the desire to have the holy sight of Sri Vittalnathji again. The next morning he set off for Pandharpur. He reached there in a couple of hours and went into the temple, but did not have the same vision as in the dream. He was therefore very sad and sat there without eating for the whole day. He did not even drink water. He felt great pangs of separation. 3 days passed in this way. Then Sri Vittalnathji appeared to him in another dream and told him that Sri Gosaiji would be coming there from Ardel the very next day. "You should take refuge in him. Then I will show you my divine vision again. Please eat and drink now." The Purohit then took refreshment. The next day Sri Gosaiji arrived in Pandharpur. He went to have the holy sight of Sri Vittalnathji. After that, Sri Gosaiji granted his sight to the Brahmin in the form of Sri Vittalnathji himself. The Purohit was very happy and requested Sri Gosaiji to accept him as his disciple. Sri Gosaiji smiled and said, "O Brahmin, I know you. Sri Vittalnathji has greatly graced you. Please quickly bathe and return in a state of purity. Then I shall initiate you. Only then shall I go to my camp." The Brahmin bathed and stood before Sri Gosaiji, who initiated him with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandha. At the very moment when he was initiated, the Brahmin attained divine vision and he again saw the Lord's divine opulence. After that, he began to experience the Lord's pastimes in Vraj. He became immersed in the nectar of the Lord's love. Sri Gosaiji gave him some of his foot water, and then he came back to his senses. Sri Gosaiji told him, "O Brahmin, now go home. You will always be able to have this divine vision even when you are there. Always keep your heart and mind steeped in the mood of love for the Lord. Do not speak too much to anyone. Give advice to any divine soul that you meet. Do not enter into business relations with anybody." After this, the Purohit bowed before Sri Gosaiji and supplicated, "This joy I have felt through your grace alone. I was not worthy of this before. You are the Lord, and I shall do whatever you tell me to. Then the Purohit went home. Sri Gosaiji also left that place and went towards the south. After this, the Purohit instructed King Jyotsingh. He showed the king the divine vision of the Lord and then made him into a Vaishnava. This has already been related previously. Part 1. The king had one son. On the 6th day after his birth, Chatti Devi, the goddess of fate, wrote the child's fate invisibly and was about to leave, but the Purohit caught hold of the end of her sari and stopped her. He asked, "What did you write invisibly about this king's son?" She said, "He will not succeed his father to rule. He will live by killing an animal every day and selling it." She stated this and left. The Purohit made a note of everything she had said. Some time after this, by the wish of the Lord, the king had a second son. On the 6th day, the Purohit waited for the goddess of fate to reappear. She wrote the child's fate invisibly and left. The Purohit again blocked her way and asked her again what she had written for this child. This time the goddess of fate said, "This son will also not succeed his father. He will be incapable of much effort. He will keep a tailless ox by his door and will carry loads of wood on the bull and live by selling the wood." Then she left. The Purohit wrote down her predictions. Many days later, the king also had a daughter. The Purohit asked again the goddess of fate, "What did you write?" She replied, "She will be a prostitute. She will be full of bad habits." The Purohit wrote all of this down. Sometime later, by the Lord's plan, the king died. Another king came to take over that village and pillaged and murdered. Everyone ran away from there. The king's sons and daughter and also ran away at that time. They were afraid of being thrown in jail. They did not run away together, but all ran in different directions. They settled in scattered villages. After quite some time, the Purohit wondered how they were all doing. They are divine souls, after all, and they must be very unhappy. I should find out how they are. Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, these three are all Sakhis of Saubhagya Sundari named Veena, Leela and Praveena. They all belong to Sri Yamunaji's group of Sakhis. The Purohit was aware of all their true forms and therefore felt sorry for them. So we'll pause here until tomorrow. Sab Vaishnavan ko sadar, Saprem Jai Shri Krishna, Shri Gosai Ji ki Jai. Aaj ke Anand ki Jai. जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे.